Welcome back to Dragonfire Investigative Research on this Tuesday morning, 10 a.m., February 24th, 2026. And what you are seeing in front of you, we will get to momentarily. I would like to begin by speaking about The Purge. Okay, now, The Purge was a movie that came out in 2013. And it made quite the stir, as basically the summarization of said movie was basically it was a dystopian, futuristic movie that basically took place on March 22nd, 2025, in which for every year on that date of March 22nd, there would be a window for 12 hours, a 12-hour period that began at 7 a.m. in the morning and lasted until 7 p.m. at night, in which all crime was legal. All crime, including that of murder, okay? And like I said, this made quite the stir. And this is actually one movie that I don't have in my vast collection of movies. Now then, of course, that basically is fictional, right? But there is what I claim as a purge that is and has been taking place. And who knows, maybe it did begin on that date of March 22nd, 2025, as artificial intelligence has been purging a lot of information from the internet, as well as purging many videos or other content from this platform, from the YouTube platform. And you can see an example or multiple examples through my community posting from yesterday, February 23rd, 2026. Now then, what you see before you is a children's blanket that I have had for basically my whole life. And thankfully, this is a blanket that my mother had stored away for safekeeping, and shortly before she had passed, she made sure that I was able to reclaim this. Now, this is in fact a vintage twin astronauts moon landing blanket from the late 1960s to early 1970s, in which when I acquired this, it might have been right around 1972 or 73. Memory does not serve me correctly because that was some time back and I was a child. Now, why am I showing this? Well, here lately, there's been quite a few people that has been posting content pertaining to the moon. And, as seen in the thumbnail image, the phases of the moon. Now then, I am going to include a link to one of my videos from my original channel of Skywise Observations, which actually began not as Skywise Observations, but as Morgan Weaver, my name. That is how I began my actual content here on this platform. And because I had changed the name or title to my channel, even my earliest content from 2017, it is now posted that it was only 5 years ago. Okay, so that right there is a little bit of false narrative through this platform and a little bit of misinformation as far as I claim. Now, the situation at large pertaining to observations of the moon, many people are kind of going a little crazy over the factor of what is known as the Cheshire Smile or the Cheshire Crescent, which now this is actually becoming a narrative that, once again, as far as I claim, is a false narrative because it does not align with the actual phases of the moon. That, well, as far as within my life and the earliest schooling that I had pertaining to science and that of space, we now have this crescent moon that looks like the Cheshire Smile, which comes from the Cheshire Cat from the Alice in Wonderland movie, Walt Disney movie from many, many years ago. But we also have what I have labeled as the Cheshire Frown. And this is the crescent that's on top of the moon, and which you can see that within the video through that link below. Now, as far as the Cheshire Crescent smile, if you will, yes, this has got quite a few people buzzing out there on YouTube land and recently posting their observational captures pertaining to that. Now then, many years ago, I began calling this crescent moon at the bottom, or the crescent at the bottom of the moon, I began calling that the Cheshire Smile. And I don't know if I was one of the original people to actually label it as that, but I do know that many people today have picked that up and using that to define what they are seeing pertaining to the moon. Now, once again, within the video through the link below, which basically 5 years ago, in which a lot of my content seems to revolve around that viewpoint of 5 years ago. This is the crescent that is on top of the moon, once again, that looks like a frown. Now then, throughout many, many years of Skywise Observations content, I have spoken, and not only spoken of, but have recorded the factor of the shadowing on the moon's surface in regards of correlation of the positioning of the sun and earth, in which has not made much sense at all. And I still have a hard time over the factor of the straight line that divides the moon when it is at that half moon phase. That just has always struck me as highly uncanny. Now then, once again, I have recorded many examples of the sun and moon being in the sky at the same time, with supposedly, the moon being in between the earth and the sun, casting the shadowing. And when it comes down to the strangeness of the crescent above or below the moon, it just does not fit into the narrative of the typical phases of the moon. Now then, this is where I shall conclude this recording by stating that once again, I firmly believe that this planet Earth is no longer in the same location of space and time. And when you factor that into the equations, and much akin to a lot of my content over on Skywise Observation, the factor of these jet aircraft and the so-called contrails and all these operations that I have shown throughout the content and the history of Skywise Observations, the question becomes now, once again, if we are not located in the same positioning of space and time, is that why they have to monkey around with our skies today, as well as creating the weather scenarios and so on and so forth, which once again, there's plenty of evidence that has been shown over on that channel, Skywise Observations. You only have to connect the dots to see the larger picture, people. Okay? Furthermore, I have also stated throughout the content and the history, or throughout the history of that channel, that I believe that at one point in time, through advanced technologies, that this planet was moved in order to avoid a cataclysmic or destructive event. And therefore, once again, we are no longer in the positioning that we once were, and no longer located within the same aspects of space and time as to where we once were. And I cannot give an actual timetable or date of when this all occurred. But when you, once again, add everything together, it does seem as though this could be the reality that is and has occurred. Now then, just for fun and a little bit of additional information, this blanket that you see here before you, I had to actually do a little bit of investigative research to find out more information pertaining to this blanket, in which, well, there are still some of these blankets out there for sale, and through Etsy, I guess it is, in which these blankets actually are selling between the ranges of $40 to $60 respectively. So in conclusion, have I given you anything to think about today? If so, would you please be kind enough to leave a comment within the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts, if you would, please. I know many people have actually shied away from my original channel, that of Skywise Observation, and that is why I ended that. But not only that, but because I started running into too many complications, especially ever since this onset known as artificial intelligence. And once again, I believe that there is a purging of information, and as far as I'm concerned, this also relates to that theory known as the dead internet theory. And I will not go any further into my thoughts or concerns pertaining to that. So I will leave off by saying, take care and have a great one. As I have often left off by stating that throughout the history of that past channel, Skywise Observations. I do have plans on providing possibly just one last investigative research pertaining to the history of America and that of the Lewis and Clark expedition, which will possibly come in as a two-part series, if you will. And then, who knows, I might even be done with this channel as well. Because, once again, with this onset of AI and the infiltration within all devices, it's hard telling whether all of my content will eventually be purged, as I have noticed much of my content throughout my playlists of different compilations through other channels is being purged. Videos are being hidden, so to speak, because of this purging process. And this is labeled as these videos, or this list has been updated. Yeah, I'm not too thrilled. I'm not a happy camper with what is occurring today through the technologies that be. So once again, thank you for watching. Take care and have a great one.